I'm Chad Ruthermond,
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
and welcome to NOCLIP Pocket. Try 'em before they get you. Today, we're going to be talking about Fatum Betula, which was developed by Bryce Butcher, published also by Bryce Butcher, and was released in 2020 on Steam and itch.io.
I hope that is all the information, because this game doesn't have a Wikipedia page.
It's a very small game.
So yeah, I apologize if I missed anything.
Yeah. The game is part of what I have learned recently was a collection of games made inspired by PlayStation 1 era games and released as like a collection of sorts. I believe on itch is where you can get the full like package of them.
Yeah, that sounds right. And I know, at least I've heard, LSD Dream Emulator is one of like the main sources of inspiration, but I'm sure there are others.
Right.
Just like weird, unexplainable, at least to an American audience anyway, like old PlayStation 1 games.
Yeah, LSD Dream Emulator is definitely unexplainable to any audience.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's sort of like the inspiration this takes. And when you try and categorize this into a genre, the Dream Emulator genre is probably not too far off, in as much as pretty much all of its mechanics are taken from that.
Mm-hmm.
It's more interactive because you actually have an inventory and they're like puzzles to solve, which means that the entire experience makes a lot more sense.
Mm-hmm.
But you are moving between zones, which in this instance do have like a logical entrance and exit.
Yeah.
But it's just a first person game where you walk around and interact with things.
It's non-Euclidean.
Yeah. It is Euclidean.
Yeah, there you go. That's the word. But yeah, I would describe this as kind of like a mix between the Stanley Parable and LSD Dream Emulator, because essentially what you're doing is just trying to figure out a series of things you can interact with that will lead to different endings.
Yeah.
Is what you're doing in this game.
Yeah, the source that we pulled this from, Blips on Errant Signal, referred to this as a collect the endings game.
Yeah.
Which is strange because I've never heard that term used. I don't know if that is like a common thing or if it's something that he had come up with.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like your comparison to the Stanley Parable is way more apt than anyone who would look at this game would ever think.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, while it isn't as guided, and like the things that you do differently on each playthrough aren't explicitly called out in any way, really, it is a very similar play pattern. You start the game entirely anew, and you just try and do something different than the last time that you played.
Yeah.
And I don't know where to begin. Here's where I know I want to, though,
Okay.
which is, what did you do first? And how long did your first playthrough last before you decided to actually go back and end it?
So the first thing I did was follow the left-hand rule.
Of course.
After I got out of the tree sanctuary or wherever you start in. And I went into the cabin and found the skeleton in the basement, and that was just like something eating at me in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
For the whole playthrough until I figured out like what to do with him.
I never figured out how to kill him. I tried everything that I could think of.
Yeah, I couldn't think of anything either. I looked it up.
Okay.
And what you have to do is there's a gold carp or whatever kind of fish there are in the lake that you can catch in like one corner with the fishing
I'm pretty
pole.
sure they're PS1 fish.
Yeah, they're PS1 fish.
Yeah.
And you catch the gold one and you feed it to him and it kills him.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yep.
Because I tried, obviously, hitting him with the machete.
Yeah.
I tried feeding him the poison.
Mm-hmm.
I tried feeding him the fruit that kills the beast. I never tried catching a fish and feeding it to him.
Yeah, and when you go down the well and you talk to the guy in there, he tells you he needs the skull of an immortal. So I kept trying to like cut his head off.
Right.
Yeah, but no, that consumed me for a while. Like I kept coming back to that guy and could never figure out what to do. But I'm trying to think of what the first ending I got was, because I did fuck around for a really long time. Majority of my playthrough was my first run through, because I was just trying to do everything that I could. I think it was the Beast Blood was my first one. I'm not entirely sure. I could go back and check my Steam achievements to figure it out, but
I actually don't know that I ever just did Beast Blood. I know the first one that I did, I had a very similar experience, except I didn't realize that the fall area was there, like the area with the cabin. On my first playthrough at all.
Oh,
so
really?
Yeah, like I just never went there. I didn't see it. I think I thought it was where I came from.
I guess that makes sense.
Straight forward across the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I did was, like, almost the very first thing that happened was I went to nightmare mode. Like I went across the bridge.
Oh, you
picked
fell
up the
asleep
machete. Yeah, went across the weird like plants on the lake into the house and interacted with the bed. Because at the time I was just interacting with everything. It wasn't like a direct path or anything. Like I went through the first area and across the bridge and into the first room that I found. And I went to the machete and I went into that little area off on the left. And I was fucking around trying to like hit the fish with the machete and moving around. And then I went up and then across and then I tried to interact with the painting. And I tried to interact with the plant, and then I tried to interact with the bed, and then shit went to hell.
Yeah.
And that was very confusing because you can't leave once you do that. So I spent a lot of time with that, like, horrible backwards music, like, just running around seeing what was new.
Uh-huh.
And, yeah, it's very strange. But as it turns out, the first ending that I actually ended up getting was the parasite ending, because I ended the nightmare, cut the rope for the boat and got the fishing rod, and then got a fish and fed it to the cat. And
right.
Then, and he gives you oil.
Right.
So that was my first ending, but I had no fucking idea what was going on at the time.
Yeah. Like the first one, I looked at my Steam achievements, and it says the first one there is nothing to worry about. And I don't remember which one that is. It might be Poison.
It's the Poison one.
Okay, so that was my first one.
Yeah, okay. That was, I think, third for me. I don't really remember. I know that the best ending that I got was... stop listening to this if you are going to play this game. Almost all of the fun in this game is through experimentation.
Yeah.
The endings themselves are pretty, like, chill and not, like... They don't do much for you.
Yeah.
They're just there mostly for like flavor. And so yeah, like this is not a game that you want to know how to do everything. That would just rob.
It would make it no fun.
Yeah. Which it's really difficult to speak critically about this game because like the goals that it's going for, it kind of accomplishes them entirely, but whether those goals are ones that you actually want to pursue.
It's very experimental. Like you don't want to go into this with the mindset of like playing a retail, like a regular retail game.
But my favorite ending, to continue now, by far was the Faith ending, which is where you get the wine.
Yeah.
Because it's just because the ending is so evocative and good. The last lines of it are like, death was not invited, but he showed up anyway.
Yeah.
And it's like this sequence of like images where it's like a people in a park in a city playing in fast forward. And then when it cuts to the but he came anyway line, it's just like a single car on an empty street in black and white. It's just really good. It reminds me of the end credits for Metal Gear Solid 2 when it's just showing city scenes for a long time.
And deer and stuff.
Yeah, when they talk about like nuclear war. And I was just like, this is the exact same feeling that I had watching the live action sequences in the Metal Gear Solid series. And I feel like that's what they wanted. So
Yeah,
Just
it's
real
like a
good.
sort of thing that I almost kind of feel like there were sequences in Dujana that was making fun of that sort of thing.
Right. This seems like it's paying more of a
An homage.
direct homage. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the wine ending is also my favorite because it's just more involved to get it.
Mm-hmm.
And my other favorite is the one where you end up killing the skeleton and giving his head to the
Which I never got.
to the guy in the well. He gives you like it's like galaxy or like universe, or it's something like that. It's just like this cosmic liquid, I guess,
Right.
in the game world that you in your little bottle, and then you pour that in the water, and it gives you like a cool, trippy universe ending thing, like almost a little bit eldritch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, I would almost consider going back to like scoop up the rest of them, but I feel like I would end up looking at guides for them, and I don't know how much I really want to do that.
Yeah, I think this game, I think similarly to like the things that this collection of games is paying homage to, is like regardless whether or not it was like scary or creepy, like I'm sure like anybody who grew up playing games had some that like felt impenetrable to you as a kid, and they were always mysterious, kind of like when we talked about Rascal on the podcast. Like Daniel said, it was really hard and he couldn't make much progress through it, and it made it mysterious.
Mm-hmm.
And he would always like go back and try and play it, and I think this game has that kind of quality where like you don't want to complete this, like you want to have a few things left undone so that it's like it remains like, you know, there's some weird shit in that game if you could go back and find, and
Right.
you kind of want it to stay that way in your memory, I think.
Yeah, I think this is a great example of when you're trying to recreate the sense of mystery that games used to give you when you were a kid, you have to go pretty far to capture that, and I appreciate that people are trying. We talked about Tamashi last year, which I think did a similarly good job of being like obviously taking from the same inspiration, something that's just totally unfamiliar to you, trying to go through that just like very straightforwardly will create that sense of unease and mystery, and I appreciate that people are doing it, you know.
Yeah, like there's always an extra layer. Like if you haven't played Tamashi, I'm gonna spoil the ending a little bit, so skip over this.
Yeah, so if you played this game and were like, I like this, then go play Tamashi, then come back.
It's like $5.
Yeah.
But anyway, once you finish that game, you wake up in the maze at the end, and like that, like hidden extra layer, I think that sort of thing always felt like there was the potential for that in the game, even before you get to the ending. Like you could do something and reveal some kind of extra secret layer. It's like that like Illuminati conspiracy feeling. Like there's like something more to this.
Right.
That like X-Files, whatever you want to call it, that kind of quality, where you think it makes you feel like there is something more. And like that feeling alone, I think, is something that can be really powerful in an interactive medium.
Right. Yeah, because it's not like in a movie. Where this is like the most baseline criticism of what video games are in comparison to other media. But like in a movie, if you see a movie that's really mysterious, and like I appreciate that shit. Like I like when I watch a movie and don't know what's gonna happen, but you will find out what happens.
Yeah,
you have to figure shit out when you're playing a game, and I think it makes it especially suited to this kind of a thing. Like you can watch a movie, and if you don't engage with it because it's too weird and unusual, then you really didn't get much out of it. Whereas with this, if you don't engage, you have to turn it off. And then you're not engaging with it in any way. As long as you're trying with this, you're going to find something that isn't what you expect.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And while we're on this thread, another one of the observations I made while playing it was this game, and I'm sure there are other games on this collection. I kind of want to check them out now after playing this, but kind of feels like a game out of a creepypasta.
Oh, yeah.
But for real. Like they skipped the writing the creepypasta part and just made a spooky game. Like, and I don't know if that's like a becoming a thing anymore. Like people trying to create these like, I guess kind of like what we were saying before, like there's something under the surface. Like I know there is a creepypasta style like ARG type thing called Petscop.
Right, yeah.
That feels like if that was a real game, it would fit right in with this sort of thing. So
yeah, I think I was originally going to disagree with you, which is but you brought up Petscop, which is an insanely good example here.
mm-hmm.
Petscop is the kind of game, or the kind of fake game. It's the kind of thing where there was a scary story and they sort of built everything around it. I was thinking, like, creepypastas tend to be something that is innately benign and then it's been made fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this game is obviously fucked up from its inception.
Yeah.
But yeah, Petscop is a great example, so you're just right.
Yeah, like this is the sort of thing I can imagine like in a creepypasta, like someone just bought at a yard sale and took home, and it was just this weird PS1 game. They played through it and they tried to look up information about it and there wasn't anything.
Right,
it was just
yeah.
like, where did the game come from? And then they go back to their PlayStation and it's gone.
And
like, oh, what was this crazy game?
They asked their parents about it and they're like, yeah, whenever you said you were playing that game, the TV was just showing static.
Yeah, yep.
Ooh.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
Is exactly what the headspace this was putting me in when thinking about it.
I played this game from between 2 and 4 a.m., which I think is the ideal time to do it. But I want to talk, I guess, on tone, and then we'll get into visuals because that's probably the thing that we most need to talk about.
Oh,
and
yeah.
haven't yet.
Uh-huh.
But we're talking about this in October. We're probably putting this episode out on straight up regular ass Halloween. And this game is not that scary. I don't think scary is the word I would use for it.
No, it's just more unsettling. I think like it's one of those things that kind of gets under your skin. It's kind of more how I would put it.
Yeah. It's one of those things where, because the game is an indie game that was made by less than 6 people, roughly. I don't know exactly how many people worked on this. I know that the QA tester credits were twice as long as the staff credits.
Right.
And it was principally made by the one guy. It seems like everything that exists in the game as an intentional visual thing could also be an actual glitch or like a rendering error or something, like things that slip through the cracks, and it makes the authenticity of it way higher than if it was like a high budget game that just dipped to like do something unique with its visuals. The fact, like, when the nightmare happened, it was pretty obvious that it was like a thing, but like one of the solutions to one of the puzzles in this game is to put poison in the ocean so that it kills the seaweed that is otherwise a barrier. And just being able to walk straight through it, I didn't know if that was intended or not. Of course, then you fall into the big hole and end up somewhere else. So obviously it was intentional. When I did it, I had no idea if that was just like an accident. It didn't have collision or something,
right.
And I clipped through it. Like,
it's like doing like hearing on the playground like glitches in a Pokemon game and then going home and being surprised you could actually do them.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like, yeah, it kind of captures that old like pre-internet video game feeling of not knowing if you're doing something that you're supposed to or not.
Yeah. And that's like, I think that aids in the unsettling feeling because it blurs the line between the fiction in the game and the reality of this weird game that you're playing. What was the name of that game that we played I want to say last year, but it may have actually just been earlier this year because 2020's gone on forever. Yeah, like the one where you mostly play on the title screen and you just have to solve puzzles.
Yeah.
It's like Calendula. Is that it?
It's something like that. I'm not going to remember.
Yeah,
but...
I think that was it. But it had a similar feeling because also the game was very straightforward. It didn't have like a lot of... There weren't characters like models in the game to fuck with. It was all just like text, and it played sort of like an escape room. And while this doesn't quite fit the same things, there's a lot more experimentation here. It has a similar like eerie feeling of like, is something actually going wrong? Is this an intended part of the game? Probably enhanced by the fact that when we played Calendula, that something actually did go wrong because we were trying to stream it from my PC.
Oh yeah, the frame rate.
Yeah, and there were actual problems. Really blurring that line to the point where there was no line anymore.
This episode not brought to you by the Steam link.
Yeah, true that. But yeah, that's basically what I had on tone. I think if the game's goal, which I suspect that it is, was to be unsettling and look weird, it 100% succeeds at that.
Yeah, I don't know that I have much more to add, but yeah, no, I think just everything that we've said already applies. Like it's unsettling, and there feels like there could be more to it, and it just adds this like mysterious overall tone.
The other thing that adds to the weird overall tone is that it looks pretty much impeccably like a PlayStation 1 game.
Yeah.
I'm very surprised at how faithfully, and I don't want to parrot the things that were said on air and Signal like word for word, but he mentions that the guy who made this game is like 19 and therefore didn't really play games during the, like, he wouldn't have been born when the PlayStation 1 released. So like it is like a totally new, like this is somebody who takes inspiration, and I want to say that he mentions this in the video, but if he doesn't, I want it to be known, like this is one of the things that's like why preservation is important, because like if you just couldn't play a PS1 game, this game would just never exist, and that kind of sucks. But you can, and it does, and it doesn't suck. It's pretty cool. But yeah, it's incredibly faithful to the platform.
Yeah, it's weird. It just another one of those things that's making me feel old, getting older all the time.
But feeling younger in your mind.
Yeah, of course.
Copyright strike.
But but yeah, we've gotten to that point now, like with our generation, like we went back and we would play like NES games, and like you see this whole flood of retro indie pixel art games on Steam, and we're getting to the point now where we have kids, you know, like 10 or so years younger than us, who are now looking back at the things that we grew up with like the PlayStation 1, the N64, and it's cool to see like that baton being passed, you know, because like especially like with games from that era, a lot of like early 3D games don't really hold up, so it is cool to see people still like interested in that kind of stuff, enough so to like make something like this.
Yeah, I think there's like an aesthetic to it, like more so than like what the technical okay, so it's weird. In fashion and in like pop culture, people talk about like 30-year trends, like where after 30 years, whatever happened 30 years ago is going to come back into fashion.
The nostalgia cycle.
Yeah. And what I feel like that exists in games, but at a much shorter, like overall.
Like a 10-year cycle.
Yeah. And the insane thing about this is like, yes, this harks back to a game that, or to games generally that came out over 20 years ago, but also like the the fashions that are popular now that were also popular 30 years ago were intended to be fashionable and look good. This was intended to be like the best that could be done on the hardware when it was released, and then we are now looking back at that and intentionally crafting like a visual aesthetic to match that today looks like hot trash in like a technical standpoint. Like, it doesn't, a dude rendered in PS1 graphics doesn't look like a dude rendered in PS4 graphics, right? Like, it's like a very abstract thing to like wrap your head around, I think. But it's just that feeling that's so strange to me that, like, I understand pixel art because pixel art is a wholly different art style that, yes, was limited by the hardware, but it is also like not a choice necessarily, but like I said, it's hard to fucking describe.
With pixel art, the technology that you can use to like create and render pixel art now can create like a different, more modern look, and I think that's part of like why that continues to be popular is people what's called like high bit art. I know I've brought it up on the cast before, but you can do really detailed pixel art now that has its own kind of charm all its own that isn't just like nostalgic.
And we just talked about Minute, which like which has not like 16-bit pixel art, but like Atari 2600 era pixel art, but it's allowed to be more functional because it's made in a modern game. I think you're right. Like that, because there is still technology being advanced in the way that 2D graphics and sprites can be made to look better and better and do newer things. Whereas this is like, it's taking something that is 30 years old and going, this is what I want it to look like.
Yeah.
And we've talked about other things like this, and I know I didn't go on as long, but it's so cool to me to see something just like plucked out of its era and used as the inspiration.
Yeah, there's an appeal to it. Like, I'm like that, like more specifically for like the N64. Just the way that like things tended to be modeled on there. Like, it's fun to find an N64 game that I haven't played before and like boot it up. And like I spent so much time playing that console, like I'm able to like go back to it and have like a good time. Like, I didn't play Banjo-Kazooie for the first time until like 6 years ago and was able to enjoy it as if I was playing it at the time. So if you have like a familiarity and like a connection to this style, it's just a really appealing thing to have somebody produce something new in that style. Like, it's like a wish fulfillment thing.
Yeah. But the specific visuals in this game are, I was gonna say very odd or something similar, but actually a lot of it is surprisingly mundane, which I think is the strength. Like, there's a lot of stuff in this game that is just normal and then presented in an abnormal way, or occasionally interspersed something really horrible. Though I think my favorite example has got to be the skeleton in the basement who just has really long legs.
Yep. Just weirdly long limbs.
It's very strange.
Yeah.
I do love it, though.
Yeah. Like, there's like a abstracted like video game E-ness to it where like that cabin just has like a entryway and then stairs that lead to a basement.
Yep.
But you don't really think about that while you play that much. So yeah, it has like that kind of quality like throughout it. Like with the cat or whatever it is, the beast.
Yeah.
Whatever you give him a fish, like you feed him, and then he gives you oil, and like the pot of oil just like comes out of a bush.
Yeah, I love that it doesn't appear. It does like slide, like it spawns elsewhere and then comes out from the background. It's a nice touch.
And then like the fishing pole, like the animation of like the line coming out is just like it's instantly there. It's like it's a stiff line and not like a string,
Right.
like the actual fishing line.
Genuinely impressed by the fishing rod. Like when I saw it, like I was like, this works in a way that I didn't expect it to, and also perfectly. Like the way that it looks is just, it's wacky and silly, but also is very good in like a lo-fi appreciation way. I like the snappiness of it.
Yeah, the animation. It's the sound effect, I think, is doing most of the work.
Yeah.
Because that's immediately what I thought of when I thought of the fishing pole, was how it sounds. I also like how when you like pour things into the water, like you can clearly see how it's just like the textures being repeated.
Yeah.
There's like a cool aesthetic to that.
Yeah, it gives it a really cool look. I mean, it has a really intended PS1 look, especially when you use it in really large bodies of water. But I think that, like, I feel like it came from the initial pouring it into the birch water, like the place where you actually go to get the endings, because a lot of the tracks end up looking very, very, like, it looks like an album cover half of the time when you do it, with like the plant growth being my personal favorite, because it's like that green blue repeating. Like it just looks very cool. I'm a big fan. Also, that ending was pretty rad as well. But yeah, I like that. I like that you can just like pour any liquid into a body of water and it just turns the entire thing into it, which can give like some really nightmarish landscapes. I poured wine into one of the bodies of water and it was just like this fucking blood red all across. It was great. I do really like that.
Yeah, and then like you already mentioned it, but when you're in like the nightmare world, and it just like changes the skybox to be like whatever you're looking at, I think is what it does, and it can be like really hard to navigate. Like you kind of just have to find like a piece of geometry and like a line that stays consistent to follow. So yeah, there is some like good use of like the LSD Dream Emulator inspiration, and like the, I don't know, yeah.
That was the thing that most made me like connect it to LSD Dream Emulator, because I think they do a similar thing with like the Japanese text in the sky that it just goes away eventually if you look at enough stuff. Yeah, that was the thing that made me draw the conclusion. Also, the weird floating skeleton guy looks like he's from Accounting Plus to me.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And also like the monster at the beginning that comes down the hallway
and
gives you the vials.
That was by far the most inspired design, I think. Like it's the one that they were, but probably someone modeled that. Potentially just this guy.
I think, unless I'm misremembering, I feel like it was just a sprite, because it just comes at you.
That's true, and then it goes back. It has like the slightly animated mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it comes forward, and then I tested. It just vanishes when the entire thing is off screen. Like it just calls it immediately. So like I like walked backwards away from it as I was going down the stairs. And like would come back up and be like, oh, okay, still there. It's a good effect, and I liked it.
Yeah, like having to stand there and wait before he starts coming towards you is really cool. And that was a fun moment right off the bat. Is like you have to open your inventory and find the letter, and then it gives you the hint to do that.
Right.
I just thought that was cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the whole opening presentation I think is super good, because you don't know what to do immediately. The door is locked, so you have to like figure it out. You try like because there's a use key and an interact key, which is a great obfuscation, because you think like, oh, maybe they do the same thing, but like use is for the item that you're holding and interact is for items in the environment, and also interact weirdly is what progresses dialogue. So you have this like confusion moment in a really confined space, so that you're not like worried about it necessarily, and you can sort of like experiment and figure out what to do. Yeah, and then him coming down the fucking hallway.
That's probably like the one moment of this that is scary.
Oh yeah,
for sure. It's pretty effective. But another thing, how long did it take you to find the beach area? Because in order to get to it, you have to like go up this little hill that it doesn't look like you'd be able to walk up.
Yeah.
And then the entrance to it is just you have to walk into a bush, basically. Like it is just like a completely hidden path.
Yeah, I found it on my 4th playthrough, I think. And it was like on total accident. Because I had gone... Oh, because I was trying to kill the skeleton. I wanted to kill the skeleton guy.
Right.
And I was like, I haven't found anything anywhere that would do it. Because I tried everything on everything. I did my adventure game shit. And I was like, how do I kill the skeleton? And I was just wandering around and trying to force myself into locations that I don't think I was supposed to go, and ended up on top of that thing.
Nice.
So yeah, I did eventually find it. I think my initial thought was that I could go behind where the beast was, and could not, and then just somehow ended up stumbling across it.
I had a similar experience, but I just thought that was weird. Like, it fits in this kind of like experimental game that just like it's just not at all telegraphed that there's a path there.
Yeah.
The kind of thing, like, if it was in an actual game would be terrible, but works here because of the kind of game it is.
Yeah, because it's not like... Cause nothing in this game is, technically speaking, critical path.
Right.
Like, in order to finish the game, you have to leave, get some liquid, and put it back in the other liquid, and then you see the credits. But yeah, like, to get all the endings, to get some of the more interesting ones, you do have to go there.
I just thought that was worth mentioning.
Did you find the, like, neighborhood?
I'm gonna probably know, since it's not ringing any bells.
Yeah, if you go into the ocean and fall down a big hole, where you end up is, like, this road, just a street, and there are houses on it. You can go into one of the houses, and it has you, which is a kid sitting in front of a television with a camera object indicator, like from fucking Unity, stuck on his head. And you can kill him and get your blood, which is one of the endings.
Interesting.
But the reason I wanted to bring it up is actually because you have a mom who looks straight out of Doom Patrol. The comic, not the show. Well, kind of both. But... and has, like, her face changes all the time. But the thing that stuck out to me was that there was just a radio program playing that seemed like a full regular radio program that was just, they put the audio into the game, and it was super weird.
I mean, it's always possible that it was.
Oh,
like,
yeah, I think
sure
it just was.
You can find that, like, there's no legal
like copyright.
Copyright
it's very
laws
old,
that would prevent you from using it.
But yeah, that was the one other thing I wanted to mention.
I could never like find a way to like go out into the ocean without it just immediately respawning me on the beach.
The submarine?
Right. I went in the submarine.
That goes to the bottom of the ocean.
Right. Oh, there was just a hole there you could fall down?
That's where you had to kill the seaweed.
Right. I got
the
key from the inside of the church. That was the only thing I ever did.
Yeah, because you got the faith ending.
Right. I did not fall down any holes.
Yeah. There's a whole... You have to... There's a guy on the beach who tells you not to put shit in the ocean. And when he told me that, I was like, well, obviously I have to put some shit in the ocean.
Right.
And I put the poison in the ocean because that's just what I had on me at the time.
Right.
And that kills the... Because I'd been to the ocean before. And there's a wall of seaweed. And if you walk up against it, it has collision. But if you poison the ocean, it kills the seaweed and you can walk through it. And that's how you get there.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's super... That one is like... Probably... I mean, I'd never figured out the fish thing.
Right.
So I guess there's some give and take. I don't know which is the most obtuse to finish, but that one to me, that was the most obtuse one that I figured out. So
fair enough. One weird observation I wanted to bring up was I feel like this also feels like it has a little bit of Undertale inspiration, because I think the song that plays, like there's just one theme for the most part that plays, kind of reminds me of the song that plays in Toriel's house.
okay, yeah.
Just a little bit. And also the sound effect, I think it's in the menu, like when you change items, it sounds like one of the sounds that he uses for voices in Undertale. Like if you took it and you scrambled it up and it was like
Yeah, I know the one that you're talking about.
That sound it sounded like the same sound effect to me.
I think they may have drawn from the same sound library.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
well, because he credits the sound library in the credits, and I remember being like listening through to the sounds, and like there are certain things that just sound really familiar, the like sound when you pick shit up. Like lots of these things are one. I think it's part of the aesthetic, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
They made it to make you go, did I play a game that had that same sound effect in it? Which is weird and kind of what it's going for.
It probably is a sound library that has PlayStation 1 like sound effects.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because that stood out to me.
Mm-hmm. Do we
Fatum
have
thoughts?
Fatum thoughts? Fateful thoughts?
Yeah, fateful thoughts.
There you
go. I liked this. It's kind of, I feel like it's kind of hard not to.
Mm-hmm.
It's got like an old like charm to it. Like if you are aware of like the concept of this, like it was like a PS1 haunted game demos disc that this game came from, I think it would be hard to play it and not enjoy it if you went in with that context. But I, on the other hand though, I didn't know anything about what you did in this game, and I found like the kind of scope of it to be like a little bit disappointing. It was like a little bit more narrow. Like when I first started playing, like I said, I found like the skeleton in the basement and the guy in the well, and like it all seemed really like interesting and like, you know, like the possibility space, like I didn't know what it was yet. And it ended up being a little bit disappointing to find out that all you did was just pour liquid into some water. But I quickly got over that, and don't want to hold it against the game or anything, because it is a super cool, unique haunted game demo. But so yeah, I like this a lot. And I like that quality, as we brought up earlier on, that it does feel like a creepypasta game. So I think it captures what it was like this compilation is trying to capture really well, and it's made me really curious to go look at all the other games in the collection. So that's gonna wrap up my all over the place fateful thoughts.
Yes. I don't necessarily know that mine are going to be much more comprehensive.
It's hard on this one.
Yeah. I think the key takeaway with this is if I was going to say if you know what you're getting into, but actually even better if you don't. Mm-hmm. This is a really interesting sort of like experimental type game where it's trying to draw inspiration from a lot of things that either are sort of like cult hits, things that don't make a whole lot of sense and are never intended to, and also just like, how do I describe this? It has a sense of humor to it that feels very modern, that would never have fit in the games that it's trying to emulate. So this is a game out of time in multiple different ways. It's a game that feels visually right at home on the PlayStation 1 due to a lot of like care that went into making this as faithful a recreation of that style of graphic as possible. but also something that is distinctly modern in its sense of humor, in the way that it's presented, and like even as like a throwback type game, you can tell from the everybody is now skeletons ending that it really is just like a silly game at heart. And I really like it. I think this is a well worth the like 2 hours that I spent with it, just fucking around and doing things, because you get caught up. You end up in that situation in good puzzle games where you go, oh, I can do this. What does that mean for X and Y and Z that I've seen before? So I think the design is solid in a really simple way, and I think that alone makes it worth it. Thank you for listening to NOCLIP Pocket.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're going to be talking about Firewatch, which is the first game, and as of right now, only game by Campo Santo, since they were purchased by Valve. We really have no excuse for having not talked about this earlier, because we were doing the podcast when it came out.
Yeah, I mean, we've brought it up many a time, and we just put it off for, I'm sure, a myriad of reasons.
But we're coming out of Halloween, and I feel like it has sort of a cozy autumnal feeling.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say it has like a fall kind of feeling, but I think it takes place in the summer. So.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's just it's very orange.
Maybe I associate like hiking in the woods with fall.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about next. It's like a walking sim, but it's very like narrative choice focused.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm interested to play it again, so...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very interested to talk about this one.
Yeah. Until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com. There you can find links to our YouTube, to our Discord, to our Twitter, our email, and all of our old episodes, like Tamashi, which we did mention on this, as probably the closest thing that we have to it.
Yeah, or like, if you like the creepypasta comparison, we talked about Pokemon Creepy Black.
Yeah, which is not like this game mechanically, but tonally shares something with it for sure. Yeah, and like I've been doing with all of the other episodes, I'll probably just have a link to the playlist of horror games in the end card, which should be coming up pretty soon, because
it's at the last 20 seconds of the video.
Yep, this is a very meta ending. If you scrolled down to hit that like button and smash that subscribe button and ring that bell, then you're going to want to scroll back up now, because you only have probably about 10 to 15 seconds left until the video ends and the card disappears. So you want to scroll on up there and click on that playlist. Check it out. Goodbye.
Pour some beast blood on the subscribe button. Also, what are we talking about next time?
I don't know.